As most of you know, I'm based here in San Antonio at News Talk 550 KTSA. And immediately my Facebook blew up, my X blew up. What's going on in San Pedro? What's the story with this so-called nightclub? I didn't have really much of a clue about it, but I know who does. It is, of course, Tricia McLaughlin, the DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs, DHS.gov. Tricia, good to see you again. How are you?
Great, Joe. Thank you so much for having me back.
You're very welcome. So this is a pretty big city, San Antonio, and we know that there's gang activity. We know that there's Tren de Aragua. We know that there's MS-13. But this was a big deal. Like 140 or 150 people were detained. What was the story? There was some nightclub underground? What do you know about this?
Yeah, Joe, this was a significant operation out of San Antonio. It was an underground nightclub operating illegally, illegal distribution, among other things, of alcohol, but as well, there were minor women there, minor girls
Oh,
really
wow.
there, and we're looking at what potential exploitation could have happened there. As well, you mentioned Tren de Aragua. We're looking at what kind of gang and criminality was of these 150 arrests. We're looking, though, it might have been up to 163 arrests.
Wow. And so I just want people who are watching and listening to understand across the country, and especially here in San Antonio, they'd had no certificate of occupancy. It was completely dangerous. The fire marshal, I guess, would have a problem with 160 people in an underground club where you can't have that many people in a club, generally speaking, anyway, but to have it underground, beneath the law, nobody allegedly knew about it. And the angle about underage girls, I had no idea. So there could be gang activity. Tren de Aragua is what you're investigating. And it looks like there were girls under 18 at the same place?
It does. And Joe, that's part of why it's so important to get the facts, but also the facts come a little bit delayed to the public because when
Yes.
there are minors involved, we have to be extra careful. But also, operations like this, they also often lead to even bigger operations, right? We follow the leads that we receive, especially when there's criminal or gang activities at these operations. We saw out of Ohio, there was a similar underground club there as well. It was connected to a gang, and we were able to follow those leads and make even greater arrests of even higher public threat targets.
I want to talk about the dumb protests that are happening in a second, but let me ask you about the difference between dealing with Illinois and dealing with Texas. I mean, I know that Greg Abbott is very good friends with President Trump. He wants the right thing done. He closed the border actually under Biden, which was very hard to do. There was a fight between the DHS and Texas. Is there a palatable difference in your department when you deal with Texas compared to dealing with Oregon or dealing with Illinois?
Oh, it is night and day, Joe. I mean, look, Chicago does have a lot of great law enforcement officers, but they're completely hamstrung by their sanctuary city politicians, whether it be the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, or whether it be JB Pritzker. They're watching our law enforcement get attacked, get terrorized, and yet when they receive calls, they can't give our law enforcement backup. Versus when you're out of Texas, we have these 287G partnerships where these state and local law enforcement officers can go in and really give us backup, but also make these arrests of illegal aliens themselves. So it really couldn't be any different. I think Texas is really the blueprint for what we're hoping to have across the country.
Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. We love having you on. We love the information. One last thing on that. You had a pop-up group of, the local media called it dozens of people that were protesting. I see the signs. Why are you separating families? Leave our neighbors alone. Again, this is an underground club where there are allegations of gang activity, allegations of underage girls there. When you see something like that, and then you hear somebody like Joaquin Castro, who is the U.S. representative from that area of San Antonio, saying, I'm investigating, I'm going to get to the bottom of what ICE did. Does that bother you? Does it bother Director Noem? Is that something that you even care about? You're just there to make people safe. Because that community, whether these people show up to protest or not, is now safer because of DHS. So how do you react to somebody holding a sign saying something dumb or a U.S. representative trying to get in the way?
Well, they're just revealing themselves to be fools because what our law enforcement is doing is making these communities safer. They are putting themselves in harm's way to go after these gang members, to go after these public safety threats, these murders, these rapists, these child exploiters. I mean, we see this time and time again, whether it be out of New York or Chicago. We often put out the rap sheets of those individuals who are inside of these detention or these processing facilities and say, these are the people you're defending. These are the people you're calling for them to be released back onto America's streets. And they are not people you'd want to interact with. They are not people you would want to be their neighbors. So maybe instead of protesting, these politicians and these rioters should be thanking our law enforcement, but we're not holding our breath, Joe.
So you guys went down there in the underground club and you separated families. You know how dumb that sounds, Tricia? You know what I mean? It's just, okay, you're probably a family member, although you're in a gang and you've got underage girls potentially. I mean, the whole thing doesn't ring true whatsoever. So when you've got a situation like that, and you said there are more underground clubs, is this something that Tren de Aragua and MS-13 are doing nationwide? We want to go and party, we want to go and do what we want to do, but we can't do it above ground. Are they building these things all over the place?
Oh, absolutely, and that's also a big hub for drug trafficking.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how, some of these gangs come together and traffic their drugs from place to place. But you made a great point there is the fact of the matter is that these people are talking about separating families, but they forgot about the fact that there was at least 300,000 children who were
Yes.
lost in the system. The Biden administration manufactured a humanitarian crisis at our southern border. Drug mules, exploited children, human traffickers, you name it, took these children. There was a 1 in 3 chance that a child 13 and above would be raped or sexually
Oh,
assaulted
man.
on their journey. And yet, where were the people then? Where were they talking about human rights and humanitarian crisis? What our law enforcement is doing is preventing people from being exploited, and they're getting these public safety threats off the ground. And not to mention, law enforcement is doing just that, is enforcing the rule of law. If these politicians don't like it, then they should try to change the law.
Yeah.
But to vilify or demonize our law enforcement is just beyond the pale.
It is that Tricia McLaughlin from the DHS. When it comes to those kids, and I'm glad you brought them up because we reported on that while Biden was still in office, and you guys came into office and said we have to find them and save them. Are they findable? And the reason I ask is because I think you and I talked about this before, maybe even in person in Washington. These kids all had an address in their pocket. Sometimes you had 80, 100, 200 kids going to the same address and the same aunt or whatever it was. Then they were put into forced labor to pay back, to get their parents to pay back the cost of bringing them here to the cartel. So are they findable? Do you know where they are?
A lot of them we do. Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Nolan have been working hand in glove on this. There's been about 25,000 of these minors, unaccompanied children, who have been reunited with a safe
Good.
parent or guardian. But that said, there's a lot more to do. There was total incompetence when it came to the actual processing here. But as well, some of these children have aged out, so that they're older than 18 at this point. But we also uncovered that so many of these sponsors who these children came in with, it was just a corrupt system. These children were being exploited. They were coming in with sponsors, whether they be MS-13 gang members or there was fraudulence. They weren't actually a parent or guardian, but it didn't seem like the Biden administration was properly, if at all, vetting these people to make sure that these children were not being exploited.
I'm glad you're finding them. 25,000 is a good start, that's for sure. And hopefully we can save all of them. I think a lot of them are indentured servants, and you guys are finding them
Yeah.
basically in modern day slavery. It is Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. Let's talk about the argument that's been going on left versus right when it comes to illegal immigration, illegal aliens. The argument on the left is these are the people that clean our toilets and serve us food and pick our vegetables. I mean, you had Jerry Nadler literally say, you'll have no vegetables and fruit if we send them all back. On the right, however, they quietly, and a lot of them won't say it, on the right they say, it's cheap labor. We get to have these people and we get to employ them and save a bunch of money that way. I'm on the right. I'm against that. So DHS is doing something about those who would employ people who are here illegally knowingly, right?
Oh, absolutely. But Joe, keep in mind, if there was a prosperous economy built on illegal immigration, don't we think that Joe Biden and Mayorkas would have had just a
What a
booming
great point.
economy?
What a great point.
It
Yeah.
it just doesn't work, and we're going to hold those employers accountable because if you stop the demand, they'll stop coming in.
Yes.
I mean, these illegal aliens, though, they have been given a fantastic and very generous offer of the U.S. taxpayer. Joe, you and I have talked before about CBP Home.
Yes.
This is still being offered to those in this country illegally. $1,000 exit bonus to leave now. You get a free flight home, potentially preserve the opportunity to return the legal right way. But I do think it's going to be a virtuous cycle. The more people we arrest, the more people are going to get the message, you got to leave now. So we think as we crank those arrest numbers up, we're going to also crank up those self-deportation numbers.
Do we know what the self-deportation numbers are? It's a big number, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 1.6 million
Get outta here. That's
self-deportations at this
amazing.
point. Yeah, which I mean, not even a year in, it's not nothing to sneeze about. But we're at about 600,000 deportations by CBP and ICE at this point.
Well, and that's great. So that's what, like 2.2 million if I add it up quickly in my
Yeah.
head. So with the self-deportations, I want to make sure that people watching and listening understand, because we probably have some listeners that have friends or family or coworkers that are here illegally. If you self-deport, correct me if I get any of this wrong, you get $1,000 and you can then apply to come legally, right?
Yes, exactly. And that we're still working out the exact mechanics of that,
Okay.
but it does look like you're going to have that documentation, right? That you exited the country illegally. That's going to tell the U.S. Government that you operate in good faith, that you left as we told you to, and that's going to put you in a better position for your application.
Well, that was my next question. Will they be in a better position than those that you are forcibly, sending back? Not forcibly, but you're arresting and sending back, and they didn't want to self-deport. Will they have a better place in line, I guess, to get back in?
Yes, certainly,
Okay.
especially though, compared to if you are arrested and deported, that opportunity is taken away.
It is Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. We always love the time and the access. Let's talk about DHS in Charlotte, Chicago, Florida, and Operation Dirtbag. Now, I had not heard of Operation. I heard of Operation Midway Blitz or whatever it was. But what is Operation Dirtbag?
So actually, Secretary Nome named Operation Dirtbag, and she
Okay.
rightly did so. It's an operation out of Florida with our 287G partners. So these state and local law enforcement are deputized by Department of Homeland Security to be making these immigration enforcement arrests. And what happened here, 230 illegal aliens were arrested by Florida law enforcement with the help of DHS. 150 of them, Joe, were sex offenders. That
Oh my
includes
gosh.
serial child rapists. These are truly dirtbags, and Secretary Nome nailed it. But the fact of the matter is, you think back to those protesters, right, who were saying you're separating families. Well, actually, we were preventing children from being exploited and from these individuals to be terrorizing America's communities.
I don't know why anybody would argue against that, but again, I think it's the optics. They think that people will believe that you're literally ripping kids out of their parents' arms. That's not happening, and it hasn't happened. But when it comes to the 287G, I want to delve into that a little bit, because those watching and listening probably have heard that term, but they weren't sure what it was. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, and you always do, because you told me privately that you get a lot wrong, Joe. But the 287G is basically ICE or DHS says, this is a bad guy, and you have him, hold him for us, right?
So it would more be, I mean, it could look like that. Often our 287G partners are actually on the ground with our law enforcement, and they're actually making these immigration arrests
Okay.
on the spot, right? So we have intelligence that there is a child trafficker or sex offender. We know they're in the country illegally. We use our intelligence and work with our CBP, ICE, or local law enforcement on the ground to make those arrests.
And the reason I bring it up, because from what I thought it worked, the way I thought it worked, 287G also was, if you arrest somebody for drunk driving, and you and Secretary Nome say that's part of Dirtbag, hold them for us, because in Denver they won't. In Denver they'll release them into the parking lot. Then you guys have to chase them down and go get them again. In Florida, here in Texas, they literally will hold them and hand you from handcuffs to handcuffs. Right? That's the difference here.
So exactly, in say a sanctuary city like Boulder, Colorado, they
Yes.
won't honor what they call detainers, which I know is a very esoteric word that doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people, but will lodge a detainer saying, as you hold them, release them into us, into our custody, so that once that person has served their time, they're not released back into the community.
Right.
So, say a Florida or Texas will honor that detainer that ICE is lodging, but these sanctuary cities won't. And why that's so important is also, a lot of viewers might be asking, well, why are you targeting sanctuary cities? And a big part of that is because of those sanctuary city politicians. We can't go into those jails because they won't honor those detainers. So
Crazy.
instead, once those guys are released, we've got to flood the zone to make sure we're getting them off the streets.
It is Tricia McLaughlin. Very well explained. What do you make of people like Brandon Johnson saying the police will never, ever help ICE? And then let's pass some local ordinances to start arresting, ICE officers, CBP officers. Let's get this guy Bavino. I mean, what do you make of that? Do you think they can really arrest a federal agent, that they've made some law saying you can't do this in our city?
No, I don't think that they will. I think it's fear mongering, and I think he thinks he's gonna scare us into submission or slow us down. That's not happening. We're still in making arrests. In Chicago, ICE and CBP both have a large presence there that'll continue. Um, so he can try and stop us or slow us down, but he's actually having the opposite effect. I mean, just case in point, look at the number of ICE law enforcement applications we have. Over
It's amazing.
200,000 Americans
Yeah.
have applied. Given the smears from the media, given the intimidation from these politicians, it's pretty remarkable. And I think it's pretty inspiring that we have so many Americans who want to answer the call and want to make their communities safe.
Tricia McLaughlin, we appreciate you from the DHS. Last question. When it comes to collateral, when it comes to sanctuary cities, you mentioned something that made a lot of sense, that sanctuary cities work that way because of their dumb policies. Like in Boston, it's a sanctuary city basically because of Michelle Wu. So CBP or DHS or ICE goes in there, whatever, and they're going to go because they want one guy, Joe Pags, they got to go pick him up at that apartment complex. Because the locals aren't cooperating, when you go in there, they now can ID everybody. And the people they weren't looking for, who might also be here illegally, but didn't do other, heinous crimes on top of that, they're going to go too. So the collateral is caused by sanctuary city policies, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and that is such a great point. I mean, we are relying on really cases and our law enforcement intelligence when we're making these targeted arrests. But if you're around a criminal illegal alien, say a gang member, somebody who deals drugs or otherwise has criminal convictions or criminal charges against them, you will be picked up too. You're still breaking the law. You're still in the country illegally, and that becomes especially true when you're in these sanctuary cities because we are flooding the zone. And that's what we've had to do because these law enforcement or these sanctuary city politicians won't let us in their jails.
It's so ridiculous. All they'd have to do is turn over the really bad guy. Everybody else gets left alone for now. It's so backward. And I want people in those cities, we're very big in Boston. They're hearing us right now. I want people in those cities to understand it's the local, government's fault, the local police's fault, or the police leadership, not the frontline people, which is why, the abuelos are going home, sending grandma and grandpa back home. Trish, I love the job you're doing. Thanks for always making time. And just keep up the good work. Come back soon, would you?
I would love to. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Always
Thanks for
appreciate
everything.
you. All right, we're back after this. Stay right here.